So before we begin, I'd like you to take 2 to 3 minutes to jot down a couple of words or phrases that come to mind when you think of cognitive rigor as it relates to teaching, instruction, learning, or assessment. What immediately comes to mind? And what I'd like you to do now is share at your tables and listen for what's the same on all of your lists and what's different. Let's hear some of the things that people agreed with at your table. When I ask you, I'm going to give you a mic just so everybody can hear in the room. So let's start with this table right here. Something you all agreed on. Who wants to be the spokesperson? Thank you.
So all of us agreed that to have cognitive rigor in anything that we ask the students to do, it's going to definitely take a lot of time, not only on teacher prep to get in there, but also student involvement.
Okay, time is always one of the first things that comes up on the list, because to do anything well, you have to allow the time. And that's when people get stressed out because they say, but I have so much to cover, right? How about something from this table? You willing to share? Thank you.
Yeah, we all agreed that we need to be able to transfer that information, cross-curricular transfer, so they're not just using that in one subject, they're using it in others and they're taking it deeper.
Great. Transfer almost always comes up in these discussions. And I like to use the metaphor that I heard many, many years ago, Grant Wiggins shared in a workshop. He said, coming to school is like being on the team. You get to come to practice every day and do the drills, but you don't get to play very many games. When you play the game, that's transfer. That's when you figure out when to dribble, when to pass, when to shoot, when is it going to work in a game situation. You're making decisions on your feet. As a matter of fact, he used to tell a very funny story about coaching his daughter's soccer team when she was in middle school. And he said he's standing on the sidelines and they're not doing anything that they did in practice. And he's yelling to one of the players, he says, Stephanie, look for the open man, give and go like we did in practice. And she turns around and puts her hands on her hips and says, they're not lining up like they did in practice. Right? Sometimes we're not giving them opportunities to transfer before they get to the game at the end. So in between the drills and the game are the scrimmages. Right? How's a scrimmage different from a game? How is a scrimmage different?
A lot of coaching interaction.
There's coaching interaction. You can stop and say, what just happened here? Let's look at where everybody is. What could we do next? You just sort of do a think aloud in the moment. How else is a scrimmage different? It might be scripted. You have a certain plan, something you want to accomplish. You were going to say something as well?
They're playing against their own players.
They're playing against their own players, okay? It's not a real game. It doesn't count. There's no score. It's formative assessment, right? The best kind of formative assessment is when you start to put the skills together and practice it. So I like to challenge teachers to look at a unit plan and say, where are my drills? Where are my games? And where are the scrimmages? Because if you don't have any scrimmages, they're not ready for the game. Often the scrimmages have a lot of scaffolding to prepare them for the game. So we'll kind of continue to come back to that idea of what kind of scaffolding helps kids to practice integrating those skills. How about another example? How about from this table? Something you all agreed on? She's saying, do I have to take the mic?
We talked about how there needs to be proof in their logic and engagement, asking why.
Okay, say a little bit more about proof. What did you mean by that?
Well, I can.
You have a whole table here, so they can help you.
We want to add to that. I would say proof in their logic is just being able to use some examples and use different resources to come together with their ideas, how they came up with those ideas. and showing some evidence of their thinking.
Okay, so evidence of thinking changes by content area, right? If it's a math problem, the evidence becomes the calculations, the diagrams, the graphs, the tables, the equations, the explanations, the words that go with it. That's very different evidence from when they're doing reading, or maybe when they're doing science, when they're looking at their measurements becomes their evidence. So we have to teach kids that in each content area, where to find the evidence. And if we ask good questions, we're pointing them in the right direction, but sometimes we don't help them so much. We just ask a big, wide open question, and then they're a little confused. Good. And you said engagement. How many people had engagement? I assume that probably came up at many tables. Engagement. How about, I'm going to squeeze back here. How about this table here? Something else you might have had in common at your table. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. We talked about giving them the wait time needed so that they feel that they have enough time to process the information and then be able to work together as groups, like we're doing now, sharing it with our shoulder partner so that they can learn from others as well as from themselves.
Yeah, you said several different things, so let me unpack it a little bit. You said working together. Here's what we know about the research with working together. You don't need to be a good cooperator to be successful in college, but you do need it to be successful in the workplace, in life. So it's a skill we want kids to develop over time. What's most important about the group work is you can learn more, and you can learn more quickly when you learn together. So putting kids into groups to do low-level tasks is not really the idea behind this. It's putting them together and letting them struggle together and feel the sense of accomplishment of working together like a team. And that involves that engagement, that wait time, that processing time. Because let's be honest, teachers kind of like to jump in. We feel like we've got to save them sometimes. And maybe all they need is a hint to keep them moving. They don't need us to do all the thinking. When I say who's working hardest in your classroom, sometimes the teacher's doing all the thinking for them. But we have to be willing to step back and be more of a coach and let them do that struggle.